I found out my grandfather died from a missed call. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where life feels boring and predictable. I was stuck in traffic, one hand on the steering wheel, the other holding a coffee cup that had already gone cold. My phone buzzed once, then again, then a third time. I ignored it like an idiot, because when nothing bad has happened for a while, you start believing nothing bad ever will. When I finally parked outside my office, I checked the voicemail. A calm voice said, "Mr. Carter, this is Alan Ridgway from Ridgway & Cole Legal Partners. Please contact us as soon as possible regarding your grandfather, Thomas Carter. This is urgent." My stomach tightened. My grandfather was old, sure, but he was stubborn old, the kind of man who refused help and fixed everything with his own hands. He lived outside the city on 40 acres of land in a house that smelled like pine wood and engine oil. He raised me more than my father ever did. The idea of him being urgent made my skin go cold. I called back immediately. Alan Ridgway answered. His voice was respectful, careful. "Ethan Carter?" he asked. "Yes," I said, already nervous. "Is my grandfather okay?" There was a pause long enough for my heart to sink. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Your grandfather passed away last night." For a second, I stopped breathing. The parking lot blurred. The world sounded far away, like my mind was pulling curtains to protect itself from reality. "No," I whispered. "That can't be." Alan continued. "He left instructions for us. You are required to attend the reading." The reading? That word didn't feel like death. It felt like paperwork. But my grandfather was the kind of man who made paperwork dangerous. "When?" I asked, voice tight. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m., Alan replied, "at our downtown office." I don't remember driving home. I don't remember the exact moment grief hit. I just remember the feeling that something heavy had been taken out of my chest and replaced with emptiness. That night, my brother called, Jason Carter. If there is one thing you should know about Jason, it is that he was always hungry. Not hungry like someone who needed food, hungry like someone who believed he deserved more than life ever gave him. "Ethan," Jason said softly, like he was practicing sadness, "I heard about Grandpa." I waited for him to ask if I was okay. He didn't. Instead, he said, "I'm handling the arrangements. You don't need to stress." That sentence hit wrong. Jason handling anything meant Jason controlling it. "I'm coming tomorrow," I said. "Of course," he replied quickly, "but listen, Grandpa didn't leave much, just the land, and the taxes are insane. It's going to be a mess." The land. My jaw tightened. Grandpa's land wasn't just land. It was 40 acres near a development zone, the kind of land that would be worth millions soon. Grandpa knew that. He once told me, standing under the old oak tree near the workshop, "This land will make men greedy. Promise me you won't let greed make you stupid." I promised. Now my brother was talking like the land already belonged to him, like it was a burden he needed to solve. "We'll talk tomorrow," Jason said, then ended the call. I stared at my phone, feeling something cold crawling through me. Jason didn't talk about Grandpa's life. Jason talked about Grandpa's property. That night I dreamed of Grandpa's house. The windows were dark. I called his name, but no answer came. Then footsteps approached behind me. I turned and saw Jason holding Grandpa's keys, smiling like he'd been waiting. I woke up sweating. The next morning, Ridgway & Cole Legal Partners looked like money. Glass walls, clean floors, silent confidence. When I stepped into the waiting room, Jason was already there. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my rent. He smiled at the receptionist like he owned the building. When he saw me, his smile widened. "Little brother," he said warmly, arms open like he wanted a hug. I didn't move. Jason leaned closer. "I took care of everything," he whispered. "Don't worry." That wasn't comfort. That was a warning. Alan Ridgway called us into his office. The moment we sat down, Alan opened a folder and began calmly. "Thomas Carter left a will. It includes specific instructions about his land and assets." Jason's eyes lit up. Then Alan looked directly at me. "Mr. Ethan Carter, your grandfather left you something separate from the will. He insisted it be delivered only after his death." He pulled out a sealed envelope stamped with red wax and placed it in front of me. "For Ethan only." Jason's smile froze. "What's that?" he asked sharply. Alan's voice turned firm. Only Ethan may open it. I picked up the envelope with trembling fingers, and as I did, I saw Jason's hand clench into a fist on his knee. Jason wasn't nervous about Grandpa dying. Jason was nervous about what Grandpa left me.
The envelope felt heavier than paper should. I stared at the red wax seal like it might burn my fingers. My grandfather always had a habit of turning simple things into tests. Even in death, he was still testing me. Jason leaned forward, eyes locked on my hands. "Open it," he said with a forced laugh. "What could it be? Another speech about responsibility?" I ignored him. Alan Ridgway adjusted his glasses and spoke calmly, but there was steel under his tone. "Your grandfather instructed that you open it here," he said, "in front of me." I nodded, then slid my finger under the wax. It cracked sharply. Jason flinched like the sound hurt him. Inside was a handwritten letter. Grandpa's handwriting, thick strokes, stubborn curves, made my throat tighten before I even read the words. "Ethan, if you are reading this, I'm gone. Don't waste tears. Use your head." I swallowed hard and kept going. "Jason will try to take the land from you. He will smile, he will cry, he will threaten. Do not believe him." My heart dropped. Jason's face twitched with panic for half a second before he masked it with offended anger. "What the hell is Grandpa saying?" he snapped. Alan raised his hand slightly, warning him. I continued reading, my hands trembling. "That land is not just land. It is proof, and it is danger. If Jason controls it, he will bury the truth forever. If you control it, you will finally learn why I kept you close and kept him away." A cold wave passed through me. I had always wondered why Grandpa treated us differently. Jason was older, louder, charming when it benefited him, yet Grandpa never trusted him, not fully. Now I understood it wasn't personality, it was fear. The letter continued. "I have placed something in safe deposit box 108 at Westbridge Bank. The key is attached under this paper. Only you are authorized to access it. Not Jason, not your father, no one. Go there before the funeral, because once Jason finds out, he will move fast and dirty." My eyes flicked to Jason. His jaw was tight, his knee bouncing, his fingers tapping, every nervous habit he had when he was lying or losing control. Then I reached the final lines. "Do not confront Jason. Let him think he's winning. And trust the lawyer. He is the only man I ever paid to stay honest." I folded the letter slowly and slid it back into the envelope. My chest felt tight, like Grandpa had just reached through death to hold me by the collar. Jason couldn't take it anymore. He leaned forward, voice sharp. "What does it say? What is in that box?" I met his stare calmly. "None of your business," I said. Jason's face twitched with hatred. "We're brothers," he hissed. "You're acting like I'm a stranger." Alan raised his hand slightly, warning him. Alan cleared his throat and opened another folder. "We will proceed with the will reading," he said. Jason sat back, forcing a smile as if he still believed everything would end in his favor. Alan began formally. "Thomas Carter's estate includes Thomas Carter Land Parcel A, 40 acres, the house, and associated development rights." Jason's eyes gleamed again. Then Alan delivered the sentence that killed the color in my brother's face. "All land and property rights transfer to Ethan Carter." For a second I thought Jason didn't understand. Then he did. "What?" he whispered, voice cracking. "No, that's not—" Jason slammed his palm on the desk. "That's impossible. I'm the firstborn. I lived closer. I handled his bills." Alan's eyes sharpened like a knife. "You handled his bills?" he asked slowly. Jason hesitated too long. The room went colder. Alan kept reading. "Jason is left a sum of $20,000 and Thomas Carter's personal watch." Jason laughed, but it sounded broken. $20,000? A watch? He spat. "That's a joke." Alan's voice stayed calm but firm. "Your grandfather did not joke about wills," he said. "His instructions were explicit." Jason stood up abruptly. His chair scraped the floor, loud and ugly. He pointed at me like I was the thief. "You manipulated him," he hissed. "You poisoned him against me." I stood too, slower, controlled. "Grandpa knew you," I said quietly. That was enough. Jason's eyes burned with hatred. "This isn't over," he said. He stormed out of the office, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass. Silence filled the room like smoke. Alan exhaled and looked at me. "He will fight," he said, "and he will not fight fair." He slid a smaller envelope toward me. "This contains the legal copy of the will in authorization documents. You'll need them if Jason tries to freeze accounts or challenge the inheritance." My stomach tightened. "Can he really do that?" I asked. Alan's eyes turned grim. "Jason has already tried," he said. "Before you walked in today, he demanded access to your grandfather's files. He tried to get a copy of the will." My blood went cold. "So he knew," I whispered. Alan nodded. "He suspected," he said. "Greedy people always do." I left Ridgway & Co. with Grandpa's letter in my pocket and the will papers under my arm. My grief still hurt, but now it was mixed with something sharper, caution. Because my grandfather didn't just leave me land, he left me a warning. And Jason wasn't angry because he lost money. Jason was terrified because Grandpa gave me something he couldn't control.
I drove to Westbridge Bank with my grandfather's letter pressed against my chest like it could protect me. Traffic felt slower than usual. Every red light felt personal. My mind kept replaying Grandpa's words, "Go there before the funeral. Jason will move fast and dirty." I used to think Grandpa exaggerated about people. Now I realized he had simply lived long enough to recognize patterns. When I pulled into the parking lot, my stomach dropped. Jason's black SUV was already there. For a second, I just sat in my car staring at it. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. How did he get here so quickly? Did he follow me? Or did he guess, like a gambler who knows exactly where the money is hiding? I forced myself to move. Inside the bank, everything was polished and quiet. A receptionist looked up with a friendly smile. "Good morning." "I need access to safe deposit box 108, I said, keeping my voice calm. "Thomas Carter's authorization. I'm Ethan Carter." Her smile stayed, but her eyes sharpened in recognition. She typed quickly, then nodded. "One moment, Mr. Carter." Mr. Carter. She said it like I mattered. Before she could stand, I noticed movement behind a glass wall near private offices. Jason was there, speaking to a bank employee. His hands were moving, impatient, demanding. Even from a distance, I could feel his entitlement filling the room. Then, Jason saw me. Our eyes locked through the glass. He froze, then his face twisted into something ugly. He shoved papers toward the employee and marched into the lobby like a storm. "What are you doing here?" he snapped, stopping too close. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You stalking me now?" I kept my tone neutral. "I'm handling Grandpa's affairs," I said. Jason scoffed. "You mean stealing," he hissed. Then his expression shifted quickly into fake warmth. "Ethan, listen, we can be smart. We can split the land, 50-50. You keep the house, I take development rights. It's fair." Fair. Jason had never used that word unless he was cheating. "I'm not splitting anything," I said. Jason's smile dropped instantly. "You think you can fight me?" he whispered. "You don't understand what Grandpa did. You don't understand who's watching that land." The receptionist called my name. "Mr. Carter, please follow me." I walked away without replying. Jason's voice followed like poison. "You don't even know what you're holding. And once you do, you won't be able to sleep." Down in the vault level, the air turned colder. The bank employee led me into a private room and placed box 108 on the table. Then she left me alone. My hands shook as I used the key taped under Grandpa's letter. The lock clicked. I lifted the lid. Inside were 3 items: a flash drive, a folded document, and a small envelope labeled in Grandpa's handwriting.
For Ethan only. Do not show Jason until the end. My throat tightened. I unfolded the document first. It was a deed. More than a deed. Mineral rights and development rights, and the owner name was mine. Ethan Carter. The date was 8 years ago. Grandpa had secretly transferred it to me years before he died. He didn't leave me the land, he protected it for me. Then I opened the envelope. Ethan, if you're holding this, Jason has already started stealing. He will say the land is worthless. That is a lie. The land hides a vault underground, a real vault. I built it after my father betrayed me. The vault contains proof of what Jason's real father did. If that proof gets out, Jason loses everything. That's why he wants the land, not money. Silence. My blood turned ice. Jason's real father. My brother's father was my father. That was what I'd been told my whole life. I reread the words again. Proof, vault, betrayal, Jason's real father. I stared at the flash drive like it might contain a monster. I plugged it into my laptop. A folder opened with dozens of files, audio recordings, photos, scanned documents, and one video titled, "The Night Your Father Sold Us Out." My breathing turned shallow. I clicked it. My grandfather appeared on screen, younger than I remembered, eyes hard like steel. He stared into the camera like he was staring into my future. "Ethan," he said, voice low, "if you're seeing this, then I'm dead, and Jason is coming for what he can't afford the world to know." My hands numbed. "Your father didn't just betray me," Grandpa continued. "He worked with men who destroy families for profit." Then Grandpa paused, like he knew the next words would burn. "And Jason is not just your brother." My stomach dropped. "Jason is the son of the man who murdered your mother." The room tilted. My lungs refused to breathe. "My mother died when I was 12. I was told it was illness, a tragedy, something unfair. But Grandpa just said murder." I couldn't move, couldn't blink, couldn't think. Then a sharp knock rattled the private room door. I jumped, heart pounding. Jason's voice came through, calm and dangerous. "Ethan, I know you're in there. Open the door."
My whole body went cold. There was no reason Jason should have been down here. Vault access was restricted. Private rooms had doors for a reason. The fact that he was outside mine meant he either bribed someone, threatened someone, or already had control of someone. Grandpa warned me, Jason will move fast and dirty. I shut the laptop immediately and pulled the flash drive out like it was burning my fingers. I shoved it into my pocket along with Grandpa's letter and the mineral deed. Then I forced my face into calm and opened the door just enough to step outside. Jason stood there, smiling. But it wasn't the friendly smile he used at family barbecues. It was tight, fake, and angry underneath. Behind him, a bank employee hovered nervously, eyes shifting between us like she wanted to disappear. "Everything okay?" the employee asked. Jason answered before I could. "We're fine," he said warmly. "Just family stuff." I nodded, copying his fake calm. "Yes," I said, "we're done." Jason stepped closer until his breath warmed my cheek. His voice dropped low enough that the employee couldn't hear. "What did you see?" he whispered. I met his eyes. "Nothing that concerns you." Jason's jaw clenched. Then his smile returned instantly, like he changed masks on command. He turned to the employee. "We'll walk together. We arrived together." I understood the message. He didn't want me alone. He wanted control over where I went next. We rode the elevator up in silence. The bank lights were too bright. The air smelled too clean. Jason stood beside me like a shadow that didn't belong. When the doors opened into the lobby, he guided me toward the exit like I was a child. His SUV was parked outside, waiting like a trap. "We need to talk," he said politely. "No lawyers, no banks, just brothers."
I forced a small smile. "Sure," I said. I stepped toward his SUV. Jason relaxed slightly. That was his mistake. At the last second, I turned and walked toward my car instead. Jason cursed and grabbed my arm, fingers digging in painfully. "Don't play with me," he hissed. I yanked free and raised my voice just enough for people to look. "Touch me again," I said calmly, "and I'll scream loud enough for every camera in this building to record it." Jason froze. He hated witnesses. He hated losing in public. His hand dropped. His eyes narrowed. "You think cameras protect you?" he whispered. "You don't understand what Grandpa did. You don't understand what you're holding." I stared at him. "Then tell me." Jason's mouth twitched. He looked around, then leaned closer. "That land is cursed, and if you go digging where Grandpa said not to, you'll die." A chill crept up my spine. Because Grandpa never warned me not to dig. Grandpa wanted me to find the vault. Jason was lying, and his lie proved the truth. I got into my car and drove off fast. In my mirror, Jason stood in the parking lot staring after me like he was watching prey escape the net. That night, I drove straight to Grandpa's property. The house was dark, but it didn't feel empty. The land still held his presence, the way the trees lined the dirt road, the way the old porch light flickered like it had always done, the way the wind moved through the tall grass like whispers. I parked behind the workshop. The workshop was Grandpa's kingdom, tools on the wall, workbench in the center, the smell of oil and wood and metal. I turned on the overhead light and walked toward the workbench. In Grandpa's letter, he mentioned the vault. He also mentioned something worse, my father's betrayal. My hands shook as I searched under drawers, behind toolboxes, in places Grandpa always hid spare keys. Finally, near the back of the bench, I found something that didn't belong, a small metal keyhole panel. I pulled out the key from the safe deposit box, not a bank key, an industrial key. I inserted it. A click. The workbench shifted slightly, like it was resting on hidden rails. My heart slammed. I pushed carefully. The bench slid sideways, revealing a metal hatch in the floor. A real hatch. Cold air rushed up from below. The smell of dirt and steel hit my nose. My skin prickled. I twisted the lock. The hatch opened. A ladder descended into darkness. I turned on my flashlight and climbed slowly, each rung creaking softly under my weight. My breath echoed. My heartbeat sounded too loud. At the bottom, a narrow corridor led to a steel door. I pushed it open. Inside was a small underground room lined with shelves. And there, sitting on the center shelf like it had been waiting for me, was a wooden box carved with the Carter family mark. My throat tightened. I opened it. Inside were old photographs, letters sealed in plastic, a small handgun wrapped in cloth, and a thick file labeled Mother. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. I opened the file. The first page was a police report I had never seen. Cause of death, suspected poisoning. Suspect, unknown. My mouth went dry. Then I turned the page and saw a name that made my blood freeze. Richard Vale. I didn't recognize it first until the next page, a photograph. Richard Vale standing beside my father and beside another man, a man who looked exactly like Jason. My stomach twisted. Jason's real father. So Grandpa's warning was true. Jason wasn't stealing land. Jason was stealing silence. A floorboard creaked above the workshop. I froze, flashlight trembling. Then I heard the workshop door open slowly. A voice called through the darkness, soft but deadly. "Ethan."
My lungs locked. For a moment, I didn't move. I didn't even blink. My body went cold with the kind of fear that makes you feel like your bones are glass. Above me, in the workshop, Jason was walking slowly, carefully, like he already knew the house was empty and the workshop was the only place worth searching. How did he find me? I shut off my flashlight instantly and pressed myself behind one of the shelves. The underground vault was narrow, but dark enough to swallow me if I stayed still. Jason's voice floated down through the hatch like smoke. "I'm not here to fight," he called softly. "Ethan, we can talk." Talk. That word always came before manipulation. Footsteps moved across the workshop floor, then a drawer slid open. Tools clinked. Jason was searching, not like a curious person, but like a man who knew exactly what he was hunting. My heart hammered as I held my breath. Then came the sound that made my stomach drop. The workbench shifted. Jason found the hidden rails. He laughed, low and pleased. "Well, well," he murmured. "Grandpa really did build you a little secret hole." The hatch opened. Light spilled down a ladder. I stayed silent. Jason descended slowly, one step at a time, his phone flashlight cutting through the darkness. His shadow moved along the corridor like something alive. When he reached the bottom, he paused and scanned the room, letting the beam sweep across shelves, the wooden box, the file labeled Mother. His breathing changed. He stepped forward fast, like a starving man seeing food. "Where is it?" he whispered to himself. He opened the file with shaking hands and flipped pages quickly. His face tightened, then turned pale. Not surprise, fear. Then anger exploded over it like oil on fire. "You stupid old man," Jason snarled. "You kept it." He wasn't talking about inheritance. He wasn't talking about money. He was talking about proof. Jason pulled out his phone and dialed. His voice dropped, rushed, nervous for the first time in my life. "He found it. The vault is real. No, I don't know where he is yet, but he's close. Send someone, now." My blood went ice. Someone. Not police, not family. Backup. Jason hung up and started shoving things into a bag he brought. Photos, letters, documents, anything that could destroy his bloodline. He moved like a thief who'd practiced this in his head 1,000 times. Then he found something else in the wooden box, an old audio recorder. He pressed play. Grandpa's voice filled the room, calm but sharp like a knife. "Jason," Grandpa said, "if you're hearing this, you already stole from me, and Ethan is already coming for you." Jason froze. His face tightened like he was listening to a ghost. Grandpa continued, "I know why you want the land. You're not here for money. You're here to bury what your father did." Jason's jaw clenched. He whispered, "Shut up." But Grandpa's voice didn't stop. "In this vault is proof of murder, proof of betrayal, and proof of who you really are, Jason, a coward raised by criminals." Jason's rage snapped. He grabbed the recorder and threw it against the wall so hard it shattered. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Jason stood there breathing heavy, eyes wild, face sweaty with panic. Then he whispered words that made me almost vomit. "If Ethan doesn't stop, I'll do to him what we did to his mother." We. He said we. Jason wasn't just protecting his father. Jason was part of the darkness. I swallowed hard and forced myself not to move. I needed to keep listening, keep collecting truth. Above us, a car door slammed outside the workshop. Then another. Footsteps approached the property, multiple sets. Jason smiled slowly, relieved. "Good," he whispered. "They're here." My chest tightened. Jason wasn't alone. Now I understood why Grandpa said the land was danger. It wasn't because of taxes. It wasn't because of greedy developers. It was because someone had murdered for this secret before, and they were willing to murder again. Jason grabbed the last file and shoved it into his bag. Then he turned, scanning the room again. The flashlight beam moved slowly, searching corners, shadows, shelves, searching for me. I held my breath until it hurt. The beam passed over my hiding spot once, twice, then stopped. Jason stepped closer. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. Then Jason smiled. "Ethan," Jason said softly,
like he was speaking to a scared child. "I know you're here. Stop hiding. You don't want to make this harder." His voice was calm, but his eyes were cruel. He thought he had already won. I gripped a metal tool from the shelf behind me, ready to swing if he came close enough. Jason took another step, then another. I could smell his cologne now. "Give me the drive, and I'll let you walk out. You can keep the land. You can keep your pathetic little life." I stared at him from the darkness, voice low. "No." Jason's face vanished instantly. His face twisted into hatred. "Then you die here," he hissed. And above us, the hatch slammed shut. The sound echoed through the vault like a coffin lid. Then a lock clicked into place. Jason had trapped us underground, not just to steal the evidence, but to make sure I never left with it alive.
The lock clicking into place was louder than thunder down here. Jason stood near the ladder with his phone's flashlight aimed at me like a weapon. The shadows made his face look sharper, almost unfamiliar. He was still my brother by blood, but in that moment he looked like someone wearing my brother's skin. "Now we're alone," Jason said quietly. "No cameras, no witnesses, just you and me." I forced myself to breathe slowly, like Grandpa's voice was guiding my lungs from the grave. Jason smiled again, but this time it wasn't fake warmth. It was satisfaction. "You should have stayed in the city. You should have signed the land over and moved on. But you always had to be the good son, Grandpa's favorite." I tightened my grip on the metal tool I held. It was heavy, cold. Not a gun, but enough to hurt someone who deserved it. "What do you want, Jason?" I asked. Jason spread his hands, like he was explaining something obvious. "I want to live," he said, "because if that vault goes public, it destroys my father, and if my father goes down, he takes me with him." My stomach turned. So Jason admitted it again. He wasn't innocent. He was attached to the crime like a chain. "You killed my mother," I said, voice low. Jason flinched, just slightly. Not denial, not shock. Annoyance. "I didn't put poison in her cup, but I know what happened, and I know why it happened." He leaned closer. "Your mother was going to talk. She was going to expose Richard Vale. So she became a problem." Hearing it spoken so bluntly made my stomach knot. My mother wasn't a tragedy. She was a solution. Jason continued, voice cold. "And Grandpa knew. He tried to fight back, but he couldn't prove it, so he built this vault like some revenge fantasy." I swallowed. "A fantasy?" I asked. "Then why are you sweating?" Jason's jaw tightened. His eyes darted to the files he was stuffing into his bag. "Because it wasn't fantasy. It was truth." Jason suddenly snapped his fingers. "You know what?" he said. "We can still fix this. Give me the drives and the files, and you walk out. We pretend Grandpa's secrets died with him." I stared at him. "And my mother?" I asked. Jason's eyes hardened. "The past stays buried," he hissed. That sentence lit something inside me, something sharp, angry, powerful. Not just grief anymore. Justice. I stepped forward slowly. "You want it buried," I said, "because it proves you're not my brother." Jason's face twisted. "Don't say that." I smiled coldly. "Grandpa said you had a real father, and now I've seen his face." Jason's control snapped. He lunged toward me with sudden rage. I reacted instinctively, swinging the metal tool at his wrist. It connected with a sickening thud. Jason yelped and dropped his flashlight. The lights spun across the walls, chaotic. Jason swung blindly at me. I dodged and shoved him into a shelf. Files fell like broken secrets. Old photographs scattered across the floor. Jason snarled and tackled me. We crashed onto the ground. Pain shot up my spine.
Jason's hands grabbed for my throat. His face hovered inches from mine, eyes wild. This is what Grandpa wanted. Brother kills brother. I struggled, vision narrowing. My fingers reached for something cold on the floor. A wrench. I slammed it into Jason's ribs. He gasped, loosening his grip. I shoved him off and scrambled up, breathing hard. Jason staggered to his feet, clutching his side, rage bleeding into desperation. "You think you're brave?" he spat. "You're still trapped down here." Then a sound echoed through the corridor. A steel door opening. Jason froze. I froze. Two men stepped into the vault. Not police, not family. Men in dark jackets, faces hard, eyes dead. Jason's backup arrived. Relief flashed across Jason's face. Then he pointed at me like I was the enemy of the world. "He's got it," Jason said quickly. "Kill him." One of the men looked at me, then looked at Jason, and smiled. Not a friendly smile, a predator smile. "Later," the man said. Then he punched Jason in the stomach. Jason folded with a choking gasp. I stared, shocked. Jason wheezed on the floor. "What are you doing? You work for us." The man looked down with knowing disgust. "We work for money. And Jason, your father stopped paying." My blood gold cold. Richard Vale stopped paying, meaning those men had been paid before, paid to keep secrets, paid to handle problems, paid to kill. The man stepped closer to me, calm and confident. "Ethan Carter," he said, like he knew me. "Your grandfather's death wasn't natural, and neither was your mother's. Jason is a fool, but the truth you hold, that's valuable." I clenched the wrench tighter. "What do you want?" I asked. The man held out his hand. "The drive, and the files." Then he tilted his head slightly. "And you." I blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "We need you alive, because you can lead us to anything your grandfather hid outside this vault." Jason groaned on the floor, eyes wide of terror. He crawled backward, like he finally realized he was not the leader of anything. He was just a useful idiot. The man's voice stayed smooth. "Give it to me," he said again, "and I'll let you both live." I stared at the extended hand. If I gave him the evidence, I might survive tonight, but my mother's death would remain hidden, and Grandpa's final fight would be erased. If I refused, they'd kill me right here and bury me beside the truth. My heart pounded as I made a decision, not the safe decision, the right one.
The man kept his hand out, patient, almost polite, the kind of patience that comes from knowing you hold all the power. Behind him, his partner stood near the corridor door, watching me with dead eyes. He had the posture of someone trained to hurt people without feeling anything. His right hand hovered near his jacket like he was waiting for permission to pull out a gun. Jason groaned on the floor, clutching his stomach. His face was pale, eyes wide with the kind of fear that strips pride off a man. For the first time, Jason looked like the little brother, and that made me sick. I forced myself to breathe slowly. I could feel the flash drive in my pocket. I could feel the weight of Grandpa's key. I could feel the cold metal of the wrench in my hand. The man's voice stayed calm. "Ethan," he said, "don't be stupid. You're not a hero. You're a man who walked into something bigger than family drama." I almost laughed at the word drama. My mother's death wasn't drama. It was murder. I lifted my chin and looked him in the eye. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'm not a hero." The man nodded slightly, like we were finally agreeing. I took one slow step forward, then another. I slipped my hand into my jacket like I was reaching for the drives. The man's eyes followed my movement like a magnet. Then I did the one thing he didn't expect. I yanked the power cable out of the old camera unit on the wall. Sparks burst. The vault lights flickered violently, then died. Darkness swallowed us.
Jason screamed in shock. "What did you do?" he shouted. The man cursed, voice snapping with sudden anger. "You idiot!" I moved instantly. In the darkness, sound became everything. I heard the faint scrape of a shoe. I swung the wrench toward the noise. It hit something solid. Bone. A grunt of pain. The partner lunged toward me, hands grabbing. I kicked hard at the sound of his movement. My foot connected with his knee. He collapsed with a hiss. Then a sharp metallic click. A gun being drawn. My blood froze. I dropped low behind a shelf, holding my breath. A gunshot exploded. The bullet slammed into metal above my head, showering rust and dust. Jason screamed again, louder this time. I fought the urge to panic. Panic makes you stupid. Grandpa hated stupidity. I pulled my phone out and turned on the flashlight for half a second. I threw the phone across the room. The light slid across the walls like a flare. Another gunshot. Glass shattered. The shooter thought the light was me. I moved toward the corridor, silent, fast. The vault was narrow, but if I could reach the ladder, I could escape. If I could reach the workshop, I could run into the night and call the police before these men erased me. But as I slipped past Jason, he reached out and grabbed my ankle. "Don't leave me," he whispered, voice shaking. I froze. For one heartbeat, memories tried to rise. Childhood, broken toys, laughter under Grandpa's oak tree. But then I remembered Jason's words, "We did to your mother." Jason wasn't innocent, but Jason was a witness. If he died, the full truth might die with him. I bent down and whispered harshly, "Move, quiet." Jason nodded frantically, crawling after me. In the darkness, I heard the man shifting, searching, angry. You can't run forever. The corridor door creaked as the partner stumbled back up. Then suddenly, a thin beam of light appeared. His partner had a flashlight. The beam swept the floor. It landed on Jason. The man laughed. "There," he said. Jason froze like prey. The beam rose and caught his face. Jason's eyes widened in terror. The man grabbed Jason by the collar and yanked him up. "Where is it?" he hissed. "Where's the drive?" Jason cried instantly, voice breaking. "I don't have it. Ethan does. Please." My stomach twisted. Jason always survived by sacrificing others. The man shoved Jason against the wall. "You're useless," he snarled. Jason begged, "I can get it. I can—" The man lifted his gun toward Jason's head. No. Not because Jason deserved mercy, but because Jason's death would allow the truth to disappear into the shadows again. I grabbed a metal pipe from the shelf and hurled it. It hit the man's gun arm. The gun fired into the ceiling. Sparks rained down. Jason screamed and dropped. The man roared in anger and swung his flashlight beam toward me. I ran. I sprinted down the corridor toward the ladder, lungs burning. Behind me, footsteps pounded, fast, trained, furious. I reached the ladder and climbed like my life depended on it, because it did. I shoved at the hatch. It wouldn't move. Locked. My heart slammed. Above me, Jason shouted something. A struggle. Another scream. I pushed harder. Nothing. Footsteps rushed toward the ladder. Then, a new sound. Keys. The hatch lock clicked. Light flooded down. A calm, older voice shouted, "Ethan!" Alan Ridgway. The hatch opened. I climbed out, gasping, collapsing onto the workshop floor like I had been pulled from a grave. Alan stood above me, face tense, holding his phone with one hand and a small pistol with the other. Behind him were 2 police officers. My mouth fell open. "How?" I gasped. Alan's eyes didn't leave the hatch. "Your grandfather installed an emergency alert. If the vault opened, it called my office. I came." A scream echoed from below. The criminals were climbing. The officers raised their guns. Alan grabbed my arm. "Run," he hissed. "Get to your car. We'll handle the rest." I stumbled toward the workshop door. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. And in my pocket, the flash drive felt like a heartbeat. The truth was still alive.
but the war had only just begun.
I ran like the land itself was on fire. My boots slammed against dirt and gravel as I sprinted toward my car parked behind the trees. My lungs burned. My throat felt raw. Every sound behind me made my spine tighten because I didn't know if the police officers were enough to stop men who were paid to kill. I reached the driver's door and fumbled the handle with shaking hands. For one terrifying second, the lock wouldn't turn. Then it clicked open and I threw myself inside, slamming the door. I didn't start the engine immediately. I froze, listening. From the workshop came muffled shouting, a gunshot, then another. I flinched hard. Then I heard Alan's voice, shouting commands like he'd done this before, like he wasn't just a lawyer, but a man who had been waiting for this war to resurface. I started the car and reversed fast, tires spitting dirt, headlights slicing through the trees. As I drove away, sirens grew louder. More patrol cars were arriving. Red and blue lights flashed behind me, reflecting off the workshop windows like a warning to the night. But I didn't feel safe, because the men in that vault weren't the ones who mattered most. The real danger was the name in the file. Richard Vale. On the road, my phone buzzed with a call. Alan Ridgway. I answered instantly. Alan. His breathing was heavy but controlled. Ethan, he said. Where are you? I'm driving. Are you okay? Are the officers? We're alive, Alan cut in, but listen carefully. One of the men escaped. My blood turned cold. What? Alan's voice sharpened. He ran into the woods during the chaos, he said. We caught one, we lost one. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. That means he'll come back, I whispered. Yes, Alan said, and not for Jason. For you. My throat tightened. What about Jason? I asked. Alan hesitated. Jason's alive, Alan said. In custody. But Ethan, he's refusing to talk. He's acting like he's the victim. That didn't surprise me. Jason's favorite weapon wasn't fists, it was innocence. Alan continued. You need to come to my office, now. You cannot go home. You cannot stay on the land. This is bigger than inheritance. I swallowed. I know, I said. I saw the file. I saw my mother. Alan's voice softened for half a second. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Your grandfather trying to protect you from that truth, but he also made sure you'd be strong enough to carry it. When I reached the city, it was nearly midnight. The streets felt empty and sharp, like danger lived in the corners and waited for the brave to blink. Alan's Chute building was dark except for one floor. I parked in the underground garage and hurried inside, keeping my head down. Alan opened the office door himself. His suit jacket was messy, his hair slightly out of place, but his eyes were alert, serious. Inside, 2 more police officers stood near the windows. Alan locked the door behind me. Sit, he said. I sat, gripping the flash drive like it was oxygen. Alan poured me water I didn't touch. Then he leaned forward and spoke like a man revealing a secret he'd carried too long. Ethan, Alan said, your grandfather didn't just leave you land. He left you the map of a crime. I swallowed. What exactly did my father do? I asked. Alan exhaled. Your father was part of a development group years ago. Men with money, men who wanted your grandfather's land. The land sat on valuable rights. They offered deals. Thomas refused. So they changed strategy. My blood turned cold. They targeted your mother, Alan said quietly. The words hit like a hammer. Alan continued, voice heavy. Your mother saw things she wasn't supposed to see. She threatened to talk. Richard Vale was their enforcement. Your father made a choice. My chest tightened so hard I felt nauseous. My father helped them? I whispered. Alan didn't answer immediately. His silence confirmed it. I clenched my jaw. And Jason? I asked. Alan's eyes sharpened. Jason grew up under the influence of those men, Alan said. Thomas kept him away because he feared Jason would become their tool. And now Jason is exactly that. My hands shook. Before I could speak again, a knock hit the office door. Everyone froze. Alan gestured to an officer who moved quietly and looked through the peephole. Then he opened it. A woman stood there in a dark coat, holding a badge. "Detective Maria Shaw," she said. "Financial Crimes Unit. I'm here about Thomas Carter and Richard Vale." My blood turned ice. Detective Shaw stepped inside like she owned the room. Her eyes were sharp and tired, like she'd spent years hunting monsters that wore suits. She looked at Alan first, then at me. "You're Ethan," she said. I nodded, swallowing. Detective Shaw set down a folder on Alan's desk. "We classified Thomas Carter's death as suspicious, and we just traced a bank transfer from Richard Vale to Jason Carter, dated 2 days ago." I stared at her. Jason was paid. Detective Shaw continued, "This isn't a family argument about land. This is criminal history resurfacing. Your grandfather was preparing to testify if anything happened, and now he's dead." My throat tightened. "So Grandpa was killed?" I whispered. Detective Shaw didn't blink. "Yes," she said. The room went silent. Then Detective Shaw leaned closer, voice colder. "And now you have something they want. That flash drive, that vault proof, and you." I swallowed hard. Detective Shaw pointed at me gently, like she was aiming at my future. "Your brother stole your inheritance, but your inheritance was never money. It was a secret." She paused. "And now that secret belongs to the state." I stared at the flash drive in my hand. Grandpa didn't just leave me property, he left me a weapon. And the next move wouldn't be made by family, it would be made by law or murder.
Detective Maria Shaw did not speak like someone asking permission. She spoke like someone who already knew how this story ended, and she was only deciding how many people would bleed on the way there. She pulled out her laptop, opened it on Alan's desk, and clicked through files faster than I could process. Photos, old court records, corporate registrations, bank transfers, everything that looked boring until you realized it was built to bury the truth. "Richard Vale isn't just one man," Maria said. "He's a system. He ran enforcement for the development group years ago, threats, bribery, disappearances, and he's still doing it, just cleaner." Alan frowned. "He ran enforcement for the development group years ago, threats, bribery, disappearances, and he's still doing it, just cleaner." Alan frowned. "He disappeared after the mother's death," he said. "We thought he moved states." Maria shook her head. "He moved deeper," she replied. "He built shell companies, paid people to stay silent, and used men like your brother to keep the land under control." I felt my stomach tighten. "So Jason wasn't stealing because he was greedy," I said. "He was stealing because he was ordered." Maria nodded. "Both," she said. "Jason likes money, but Jason loves protection more, and Richard Vale offered him that." My hands clenched. "Then why did Grandpa wait?" I asked. "If he knew this, why not expose them earlier?" Maria's eyes softened slightly, but her voice stayed blunt. "Because your grandfather knew exposure without leverage gets you killed," she said. "He collected evidence quietly. He waited until you were old enough to survive the truth, and he waited until Jason made a mistake." I swallowed. "What mistake?" Maria leaned forward. "The bank transfer," she said. "Richard Vale paid Jason 2 days ago. That means Vale came out of hiding. He thought the land would finally be easy to control." Alan's face tightened. Which means Vale is active again," Maria finished, "and he will try to finish what he started." My chest tightened. "My mother," I whispered. Maria nodded. "And your grandfather," she said, "and possibly you next." Silence filled the office. Then Maria spoke again, clear and sharp. "We have one advantage," she said. "Richard Vale thinks he's winning, and powerful men get careless when they believe they're untouchable." Alan crossed his arms. "What do you want from Ethan?" he asked. Maria's eyes locked onto mine. "We use Jason," she said. My stomach dropped. "Use him how?" Maria didn't hesitate. "We offered Jason a deal," she said. "Reduced charges, witness protection. In exchange, he contacts Richard Vale. He tells Ethan has evidence. He tells Ethan is ready to expose everything, and we watch where Vale appears." Alan's expression turned tense. "That's risky," he said. "They could kill Ethan before we can stop it." Maria's gaze stayed steady. "Risk is already here," she said. "Richard Vale already sent men to that vault. The only question is whether Ethan is hunted in darkness or protected in daylight." My throat felt tight. I didn't want war, but war was already on my doorstep. An hour later, I was inside the station. Jason sat in an interview room, hands cuffed, bruises on his face, eyes full of anger and self-pity like he was the one betrayed. When he saw me, his lips curled into a bitter smile. "Well," he said, "look who thinks Grandpa's hero." I stared at him across the table. "You were paid," I said quietly. "Richard Vale paid you. What did you promise him?" Jason laughed, but it wasn't humor, it was cruelty. "You really don't understand," he said. "You think Grandpa loved you because you're special? He loved you because you're useful. He hated you because you reminded him of what he couldn't control." Maria stepped in beside me. "Jason Carter," she said, "we have evidence linking you to Richard Vale. If you cooperate, we can reduce your sentence. If you refuse, you will be charged as part of a conspiracy." Jason's eyes flickered. Fear, then pride tried to cover it. "I want a lawyer," he snapped. Maria nodded. "You'll get one," she said. "But listen carefully. We already have a confession trail. All we need is Vale." Jason's jaw tightened. He looked at me again, eyes burning. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You should have stayed ignorant. You should have stayed poor." I leaned forward. "You know who killed my mother," I said. "Say it." Jason's smile faded. For a moment, something dark crossed his face. Then he whispered, almost pleased, "You want to know? Your mother wasn't sick. She was silenced. Richard Vale handled it, and your father signed the agreement." My world tilted. "My father?" I whispered. Jason nodded slowly, enjoying it. "He didn't poison her," he said, "but he delivered her. He gave her access. He gave her schedule. Then he took the money and played the grieving husband." My chest tightened like a hand crushing my heart. Maria's eyes sharpened. "Repeat that," she demanded. Jason leaned back, smug. "Your father helped," he said, "and Grandpa knew. That's why Grandpa never trusted him again." My throat burned. Maria stared at Jason for a long moment, then spoke. "You want a deal? Call Richard Vale. Tell him Ethan found the vault files. Tell him to come collect them. If you cooperate, we can protect you and lower your charges." Jason's eyes widened. "Betray Richard?" he whispered. Maria's expression didn't change. "You already betray everyone," she said. "Do it again." Jason looked between us. He was calculating. Control mattered more to him than loyalty. Finally, he nodded. "Okay," he said, "I'll call. But I want protection, and I want Ethan to lose the land." I stared at him coldly. "You don't get it," I said. "You're not negotiating anymore." Maria handed him a phone. Jason dialed. When Richard Vale answered, Jason's voice became respectful, loyal. "Richard," Jason said softly, "we have a problem. Ethan found Grandpa's vault. He has proof. He thinks he can expose us." My hands trembled. Richard's voice came through faintly, calm as ice. "Where is he?" Vale asked. Jason glanced at Maria, then answered. "At Alan Ridgway's office." A pause. Then Richard Vale said two words that turned my blood to ice. "I'm coming." Maria nodded to the officers waiting outside. They moved immediately. A trap was set.
And suddenly, I understood something terrifying. Richard Vale wasn't a rumor. He was real, alive, and now he was coming to finish what he started with my mother right in front of me.
Richard Vale arrived like he owned the city. From the surveillance van outside Allen's office building, I watched him step out of a black sedan in a dark coat, hair slicked back, face calm and clean. He didn't look like a killer. He looked like money. Detective Maria Shaw held her radio tight. "Wait," she whispered. "Let him enter." Richard walked into the building without hesitation. Minutes passed. My heartbeat sounded too loud in my ears. Then Maria spoke into the radio, voice sharp. "Move." Officers flooded the entrance. I stayed low in the van, eyes locked on the live feed as cameras followed Richard down the hall. He paused when he saw the police. For 1 second, he smiled like it was a misunderstanding. Maria stepped forward, badge visible. "Richard Vale," she said, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, homicide, and financial crimes." Richard's smile stayed. "You don't have proof," he said calmly. Maria raised the flash drive. "Thomas Carter prepared it," she replied. That was the first crack. Richard's eyes flickered, fear fast and controlled. Then he asked quietly, "Who else saw it?" Maria didn't answer. Richard's gaze shifted past her and landed on me through the van window. He saw me, and the smile vanished. For the first time, he looked human, angry. He shouted, "Kill him!" Everything exploded. One of his men stepped out near the sedan and raised a gun toward the van. Maria screamed. Officers fired. Glass shattered. I ducked as bullets snapped through air. The shooter dropped. Richard tried to run, but officers slammed him to the ground, twisting his arms behind his back. His coat got dirty. His pride got crushed. Maria shoved him against the wall. "Tell me about Sarah Carter," she hissed. Richard laughed, spit flashing. "She wasn't supposed to matter," he snapped. "But she saw too much. So she died." My stomach turned. Maria's eyes burned. "And Ethan's father," she demanded. "What did he do?" Richard smiled cruelly. "He signed," he said. "He signed her death." Then he cried at the funeral like an actor. My knees nearly gave out. My father, the one man I never fully trusted but never believed could be that evil, was part of it. Jason was brought in later and confronted with Vale's confession. Jason broke instantly. He gave names, numbers, bank accounts, companies, everything. He traded loyalty for survival, like always. In the weeks that followed, the city turned upside down. The development group collapsed. Shell companies were seized. Records were exposed. Grandpa's secret vault became public evidence. And my father? He was arrested too. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I felt something colder than revenge. Relief. Because the lie that killed my mother was finally dead. Months later, I returned to Grandpa's land alone. I stood under the old oak tree and listened to the wind move through the grass. Jason called from custody. I didn't answer. My father sent letters. I didn't read them. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. They deserve consequences. My brother stole my inheritance, but Grandpa's lawyer called me at the perfect time. And that call didn't just save my future. It exposed the past and buried the criminals who thought they could own my family forever.